This is Jennifer Gonzalez welcoming you to episode 160 of the Cult of Pedagogy podcast. In this episode, we're going to talk about how to do an activism campaign project with your students. I think every teacher would love to have a thick file of lesson plans that are all home runs, each one guaranteed to engage students, encourage collaboration, teach our curriculum in a rich and relevant way, and develop our students into lifelong learners who can take what they learn and use it in a way that benefits the world. And because my job here is to help you do your work better, when I come across lessons that fit that description, especially if they would fit in a lot of subject areas and grade levels, I like to share them with you. And that's what I'm doing today. My guest is Jane Currell, a primary teacher who currently works with 9 and 10-year-olds in the UK. Recently, Currell had her students do a project that ended up really hitting the nail on the head, an interdisciplinary unit where students studied a fictional place called Alchemy Island. After they'd studied the geography of the island and analyzed the materials found there, Currell had them work on an environmental campaign to stop a project that would result in the deforestation of a portion of the land. Unlike a more traditional persuasive writing assignment, this task had more relevance and more tangible consequences, and Currell's students were hooked, engaging thoughtfully in the work and collaborating in a way that Currell hadn't seen before. We're at a time in history when it's absolutely vital for students to speak up about the things they believe in and to understand how a powerful voice can make real change happen. Today, we'll look at how Currell taught her students to do this and how you can do the same with any topic in your own classroom. Before we start, I'd like to thank ListenWise for sponsoring this episode. ListenWise is an award-winning online listening curriculum that brings NPR podcast lessons into your classroom for grades 2 through 12. Teach listening skills while building content knowledge using engaging and relevant nonfiction podcasts. ListenWise is great for addressing the listening and speaking standards on your ELA state assessments, like the Smarter Balance test. And with ListenWise Premium, you get built-in literacy supports, automatically scored listening comprehension quizzes, and interactive transcripts so students can read along as they listen. Research shows that better listeners are better learners. Sign up for a 30-day free trial at listenwise.com/cultofpedagogy. Support also comes from National Geographic Education. During a school year like no other, National Geographic Education is here to offer support with a space to connect, learn, share, and celebrate successes along the way. They invite you to explore National Geographic Education's free tools and resources to engage and inspire K-12 students wherever they're learning, virtually, in person, or a hybrid of the two. Join the community and the conversation with other educators across all their social platforms, including Twitter and Facebook, at @NatGeoEducation. Plus, explore all their free resources by visiting natgeoed.org/learnanywhere. That's natgeoed.org/learnanywhere. Finally, I'd like to tell you about my online mini course, 4 Laws of Learning and How to Obey Them. In education, new ideas, tools, and strategies are coming at you all the time, and changing circumstances mean you're making constant adjustments. With all this spinning around you, it can be hard to find a clear path. What you need is a compass, a set of principles you can return to again and again when you feel like you're losing your way. This mini course is that compass, a set of 4 laws for planning instruction, just instruction. Yes, many other factors influence the quality of a student's education, but when it comes to instructional planning, that 45 to 90-minute block you set aside for actual pedagogy, following these principles produces the most powerful learning. In about 2 hours, this short course teaches you the laws through videos, guided notes, and quick module quizzes to check your understanding. To learn more about the course, visit cultofpedagogy.com/laws and use the code LISTENER at checkout to take $5 off the tuition. That's cultofpedagogy.com/laws. Now, here's my interview with Jane Currell about teaching a campaign unit. Jane, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here.
We are going to be talking today basically about a lesson that you sort of tried spontaneously that ended up really working out well. And that's pretty much the main thing that we're going to be talking about doing this type of lesson where students are doing campaigns. But before we get into the details, just tell us a little bit about your work as an educator.
Yeah, well, I qualified as a teacher in Britain 26 years ago, and since then I've had quite a lot of adventures teaching in England for a number of years, but also India, Mozambique, and Kyrgyzstan.
Mm,
I was teaching in a range of settings in those places, some of them in urban slum situations and some in international schools. So I had a range of experiences around the world. And then 3.5 years ago, I returned to Britain and I studied a master's in effective learning and teaching at the Institute of Education in London. And also during that time, I've been teaching in a number of contexts in inner city London. Now I teach 9 and 10-year-olds in that
mm,
context. And at the moment, I'm very excited because in my school, I'm facilitating the process we're going through, which is to diversify and decolonize the curriculum,
mm,
which is something I'm really passionate about.
yeah.
I also coordinate history and geography, which, of course, when you bring those together, that's a massive opportunity for integrating social justice perspectives
Mm,
in the curriculum.
mm-hmm.
We don't have social studies in the UK. We have the subjects separately, but we fuse them through the topic work that we do.
When you say you don't have, first of all, when you say you qualified as a teacher, were you called a history teacher? Is that what the title of it
No,
was?
I'm a primary school teacher, Key
I
Stage
got
2,
you.
which is 7 to 11-year-olds. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. So for that age group, you study all of the different subject areas as a teacher.
Yes. Yeah.
Got it. Got
Elementary,
it.
elementary, as you would say. Yeah.
Okay.
Elementary
Yeah.
stage. Yeah.
And if someone is teaching history there, is that what it's called? It's just called history, or is it even separated further?
It's called history,
Mm-hmm.
and geography is geography, but we
Okay.
do a lot of topic work. So within one theme, you
Mm-hmm.
might have both. So they do overlap, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not anything like the social studies setup, which when I taught in an international school with a strong American influence,
Mm-hmm.
it, as I understood it, it took me a while to get my head around it there. It's history
Mm.
and geography and citizenship. Am I right? All sort of in one.
There is, I think it must be called civics, where you're sort of learning about, legal types of things and participation in government and that sort of thing is sort of civics. But
Yeah.
yeah, I guess that would be the citizenship piece of it. That's interesting, though, that they're separated.
Yes.
Um, and you also have a blog,
Yes. I
right?
I had dreamt about it for a long time, and at the beginning of lockdown, I began writing at passionforpedagogy.com. The four is the number four.
Passion for pedagogy. Yes.
Passion for
Yes.
pedagogy.
Okay.
And I'm really writing there all about critical pedagogy. So, how to look at education through social justice lenses and how to bring that into your teaching. And I'm talking about the journey we're making in our school and how to create a more anti-racist curriculum and also think about other areas such as gender and ability and so on, climate
Yeah.
justice.
That's
Yeah.
so interesting because that's been such a big topic this year in particular. It's gotten even more attention this year in America. And so to know that there's an equal amount of work going on over in Great Britain is, it's encouraging.
Yes, no, it's really happening. People are really
Yeah.
engaging with it. That was
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, this is sort of a very small piece of that kind of work, or kind of an example, I guess, of how you're doing that. Um, you were teaching a unit, and then you sort of added this campaign element to it, and so. we're going to be teaching, we're going to talk a little bit about the unit that you taught and then teaching listeners how they could do the same type of thing with their own students. So let's
Mhm.
start by, having you tell me a little bit about the unit that you did and how it kind of evolved into a project where students were actually working on an environmental campaign.
Yes. Well, I was teaching a new class. It was the beginning of the academic year, and we'd kept things quite formal, and I, in terms of structure in the classroom, and I knew I wanted to break out of that and do
Mm-hmm.
something that would mean the children were working in groups, and there was a lot more talk going on between them, and they could present things, and so I decided that. Campaigns is one of the things that we do in the upper years at our school. So I picked on that. I felt a little bit it felt like a risk because
Mm.
I didn't know my students that well. I'd just been with them for 3 or 4 weeks, and I was still working out behaviour issues. But I knew that I wanted to try out some pedagogy that meant they had some choice and there was collaboration going on. And a lot of the things I guess I'd been learning about in my MA, I wanted to step out of my comfort zone and give them a chance to show me what they could do. And and I realised that with the campaigns, because I picked an issue, and then they were going to do different kinds of persuasive writing, that there were lots of different types of writing that you could do to be persuasive for a campaign. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where they would get a choice. And I knew that socially they would enjoy working in groups. And I jumped into it and was very glad afterwards that I had, because I saw the benefit of us sort of bonding as a class, and I grew in confidence in knowing that they could manage different kinds of structure in the class and do so well. And I learnt a lot through it. So and my head teacher actually said, you could have done it earlier in the term,
Hmm.
but I wasn't ready at that point. And but I was pleased that I had jumped and taken the risk in the end.
Yeah. So the topic itself was Alchemy Island. This was this fictional island that you had been studying already with the
Yes,
students.
yes. So that was our theme for the term, sort of 7 week term, and that we use that topic that was for science and geography, but also there was lots we could do for our writing. So
Yeah.
within our writing, that's where I wanted to include it.
Got it. And basically the way you transitioned from it being this sort of interdisciplinary study of, environmental stuff and the geography of this island, then you sort of just gave them this scenario, telling them that the island was going to be developed for commercial purposes, this is all you just completely made this up.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
So the island has an area of forest on it. So I decided that I made that choice. There could have been other issues we looked at, but I decided to choose an environmental topic which lent itself to that setting, and that part of this forest would be destroyed for this development, and introduced it to them through a mock letter that
Hmm.
this was going to happen, and how did they feel about that, and it went from there.
Right. Right. And so then they all started to work on, different ways of trying to inform the public and try to campaign against this development so that they could keep that portion of the island um, intact, I guess.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that was where the choice came in, because they came up with how they could communicate about it, the different ways that you can use writing, from whether it's creating a placard or a poster or writing a speech, um, and then when we had all the ideas together, they decided which one they wanted to work on, and I think that was a key, the motivating factor, that I wasn't saying, right, we're all going to do this, but they got to
Mm.
choose which bit they would work on,
Hmm.
which was positive for them.
Yeah. And you found that the engagement was really high from them. The students really got into it.
Yes, yeah, and I think that was a because um, it was an environmental issue, a social issue that they already knew quite a lot about, and um, yeah, they, because it's a real it's real life that, they could see this going on, all the climate campaigns near where
Mm-hmm.
we live, and then to be able to choose, not being told and not doing it as a whole class, being able to
Mm,
choose their specific area to work on, I think, made it very meaningful for them.
yeah. And so, since this worked out so well, you sort of hit on something and thought this is a great thing that other teachers could do. And so, this type of project teachers could do with their students on a variety of different topics. Having students, a lot of times we will have students just write these sort of generic persuasive essays, which isn't really a real form of writing in the world. It's usually, people write to persuade. Whether it's a letter to someone to change their mind, or a public interest campaign type of a thing, or they're out on the streets protesting, and that's persuasive writing also, and whether it's a speech or whatever. And so what is it that you think that makes doing a campaigns unit with students work so well? You've done some reflection about, what is it about this kind of project that works so well? So can you share some of those reasons?
Yes. Yeah, I think there are several things. Firstly, I just mentioned that it relates to real life. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm teaching 9 and 10-year-olds. They know about climate change. We're in a context where the summer before we were together, there were lots of demonstrations going on. So I think they're genuinely interested in it already
Mm-hmm.
because it's a real life issue. Um, it's also a great opportunity to integrate critical pedagogy. So you can use your lenses of social justice. You can look at it through the lenses and ask questions like, is it fair? Is it
Mm-hmm.
fair that people are going to be moved? Is it fair that the forest is going to be cut down? What's the impact of that? Um, who has the power in this situation? So you're just
Mm,
raising these critical questions, and how much voice do the people on the island have? Can they change that decision? Um, so I think being able to bring criticality and create that consciousness in them is just really valuable
mm,
in developing them as people. Um, Also, you are giving them opportunity really to practice using their voices. So it's a very safe environment and very early steps in learning what is a campaign, and making that connection with, oh, yes, in life, I have a voice and I can make a stand. And it gives them a sort of gentle introduction to that hopefully they can take on um, into life and put into action at other times.
yes.
Um, I also really appreciated that it was collaborative. So when they're sitting in their groups, they're sharing resources, they're talking, that when they're writing model sentences, they're sharing them and hopefully growing each other. And where you've got mixed ability groups,
Mm,
that just the talk and the learning that they sort of catch, because learning is so social.
mm-hmm.
I was really happy that I could have them in groups facing each other and interacting a lot more than some other lessons.
Yeah.
So that was an advantage. And lastly, that actually I discovered that they could practice a huge range of writing styles between them, because creating a placard is very different from writing a speech or creating an interview for one of the developers to ask them why they're doing it and trying to persuade them not to. So
Mm,
they're all exposed to that, even though they're in one group,
mm-hmm.
because they're later going to present it to each other. And actually, as we go along, we stop and share bits of our writing. They're all exposed to a whole range of ways of writing. So I think they're getting a lot of breadth from that, from just one theme. So I think that's another big advantage.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what this is. It is a writing unit. It's just that it's got a much sort of clearer focus and a better real world application.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So what our main goal today is to sort of teach people how they can do this themselves. And so, we've worked on getting sort of a step by step process. And you've written a blog post that's going to have these steps in them also, so that if people are listening, they can go over to the website and find that. But we're going to kind of walk people through it right now. So, what would be the first thing a teacher needs to do if they're thinking, yeah, this sounds great. I would love to do this kind of thing with my own students?
Mm-hmm. Um, well, I think you need to look ahead at the term ahead and
Mm-hmm.
what's coming up and see what are the themes or topics that you could that lend themselves to a campaign. So is there something that naturally has a social justice angle that you could draw out? So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was the deforestation topic, but it might
Mm-hmm.
be if you were doing a space topic, who were the first female astronauts, or who were
Mm.
the first black or people of color in space. So you can choose which lenses, which critical lenses you look through, really. But looking at the team, the theme ahead, where is the a natural fit, really,
Mm-hmm.
so that it's
Mm-hmm.
not too forced for a campaign, and
Okay.
then really drawing up a list of that. And if it's writing that you want to come out of that, then connecting it to possible activities that could go with that. So I think
Okay.
that's the first step.
And then after that, so you sort of got some rough ideas of curricular connections. What's next?
Well, then I think you need to clarify the focus. So I chose that we would do it on deforestation, that it would be an environmental issue,
Mm-hmm.
and that it was my first campaign. So for me, that felt safe. But you don't necessarily have to do that. You could um, pinpoint, shortlist 2 or 3 different issues, and actually have the class vote on which one they want to do. So either way, you need to pinpoint the campaign focus,
Mm-hmm.
or discuss it and vote with your class so that you know exactly what your issue is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And and you and I have done a little bit of talking ahead of time about, number one, the value of choice in general in an activity, and then really where to place it. And at a certain point I thought, well, it would really be nice if students could choose an issue that they are passionate about. But then again, there is an argument for the first time they learn about this type of writing, putting the structure in of let's all kind of do it on the same topic, but then you allowed the choice in the specific sort of subgenre, whether it's going to be a placard for a demonstration or a speech or a commercial, an ad, a video or something like that, where there's different ways, but with that same common topic, at least then you can have research materials and that sort of thing, and not have it be so divergent in that very first exposure to that kind of writing.
Yes, and I think also it's about knowing your class,
Mm,
and yeah, knowing what you're ready for and what they're ready for. And if they're older and they've done several campaigns before and they already have their passions, then it would definitely fit to give
yeah,
them that choice right from the start. Yeah.
right. Okay. And so you've got in this first round, especially, you've got your topic, you've kind of got the theme, everyone understands. So then what is step 3? What do you do next?
I think for step 3, you need to start pinning down the resources you need, so that they start to understand the theme. So
Mm-hmm.
in my case, that was, we looked at videos about deforestation in the Amazon, and I wanted them to understand what was happening and why, and the impact of that. Um, and so helping them to understand both the theme, but also grasping the concept of what campaigning is. So
Mm-hmm.
again, we looked at clips, and of course from climate justice demonstrations, that there have been a lot of children on those, a lot of young people on those
Mm-hmm.
demonstrations. So helping them to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it and what the impact might be. Yeah, so really pinning down your resources so that you've got a way to hook them into the theme, understand what campaigning is, and then all the time you're developing the vocabulary that they'll need. So
Mm-hmm.
introducing having those resources ready as well, so that you can introduce them to the technical words of things like deforestation and climate change, and
Mm-hmm.
although that side of it, but also persuasive language and the words that they're going to need to use in their
Yeah.
writing.
Yeah. And I'm thinking everyone listening, what the word that should be continually firing as they're listening to this is interdisciplinary, because this is really where this becomes an interdisciplinary type of project, because it could be done in a science class, it could be done in a history class, it could be done in a nutrition class. I mean, really, whatever it is you're studying, those concepts could be transferred over to a certain type of persuasive writing. So this is where you're really building that content knowledge.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so once those resources have been collected, then what's the next step as a teacher?
So I think then you need to be identifying the types of writing that you want your students to develop and practice. So
Mm-hmm.
you might do that again yourself, but actually that part of the process I gave back to the class. So you could either do it in advance, or you have your ideas and then you put it to the class, and it was the class that came up with, from watching the clips and talking, they knew
Mm,
you could make a placard, or you could make a song, write a song
mm.
about it, or create an interview. So identifying and knowing exactly what you want to develop in them in terms of writing.
I'm thinking at this point too, especially, depending on whether kids are really even familiar with this type of thing, showing them, models of different types of campaigns. And it seems like it would even be valuable to look at one specific campaign that maybe a company or an organization is doing, and look at all the different ways they try to reach people with the same message through different mediums, whether it's even just like a social media post, or video, or television commercials, or whatever it is, to see how they take the same message and it's parsed out into different kinds of end products.
Yes, yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's a great idea. I mean,
Yeah.
the ones that we'd had going on around us were Extinction Rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
So we looked at their ways of demonstrating. But you're right,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a great
Yeah.
opportunity to go broader. What else were they doing? Yeah.
Right. Right. Almost how they would change their messaging a bit, depending on who their intended audience is. So, okay, so you've got the kids have been exposed to the topic. They're looking at different types of writing that they can do. So then, in the planning of this unit, then what happens next?
Then I think you need to think about the groups and how you want to manage the logistics of that. So in some situations, you may be wanting certain children to be with other certain children, but I again gave that completely to them. So,
Hmm.
and I think that choice was really crucial for them. So having together seen the different types of writing we could do, then they were looking at that list and thinking about it. Which one do I want to do? And of course, there's always a bit of so and so looking at their friend across the classroom and
Yeah.
all those dynamics going on. So they make sure they're in the same group.
Yeah.
But to a lesser or greater degree, hopefully they're looking at the one they want to do, and then they moved physically into those groups, put tables together, sat around, and as I went round the class and they selected, inevitably there's some children who can't decide,
Mm.
by which point you can see your groups, and I didn't want groups more than five, so I kind of capped them at five, and then I could put those last children, give them some choices around it's this one or this one, and feed them into those groups. So eventually they're all sitting at different tables.
Okay, so they're in the groups, and then really the rest of it is sort of just basic lesson planning in terms of putting this unit together, and planning out the kinds of lessons that you might need to do, the kinds of differentiation. What else do we need to know about the rest of this unit? Because it's like a writing unit from this point forward, like a writer's workshop almost.
Yes, yeah. I think you want to have a progression in mind. So if for me, I did it over 2 weeks. So I had
Mm-hmm.
for those 10 mornings or sessions, I having an idea of what you want to be happening in each of those sessions,
Mm-hmm.
and what you want to be happening, but also what you want them to be learning from that specific day. So
Mm-hmm.
it you can pinpoint, for example, on the first day it might be selecting the topic, but further down it might be today we're going to start I'm going to work with the different groups and model different types of sentences with them so that each
Mm.
genre gets to see some sentences and then try out their own. So you have a plan over the number of lessons you've got of what you want them to get out of it and what your aim is, and
Mm-hmm.
work towards that. Of course, it will adapt as you go, but I
Mm-hmm.
still think it's good before you start to have some kind of picture of what you're going to aim for.
And you also sort of looked ahead and planned for differentiation.
Yes, so because of the special needs in my class, I had two other adults in there. So I did time it for when I knew they would be in there,
Mm.
because I knew the dynamic of children being at tables meant
Yeah.
that for some children would struggle with that and would need adult help. So that would be one thing to identify. When do I have all my adults in the classroom so that I can put them with the groups that will need it? And oh yes, and then also in terms of differentiation, checking that you've got any equipment you might need if some children need a scribe or to be recording their thoughts rather than writing, and all that, the sort of support and scaffolding that they might need, just that you have that ready.
Right. So as the students were working together, you also had them do some sharing between the groups, of the writing that they were working on.
Yes, yeah. So I think that they're talking together, but those moments in the class when they read out extracts
Mhm.
is just it kind of deepens the whole experience because of the vocabulary they're using. Other children are going to catch those concepts, and so hopefully the persuasive words are sort of being spread around, and where some students are struggling, it will raise their game. Hopefully,
Mm.
that's the
Mhm.
idea. Yeah, and my
Absolutely.
class, I find children absolutely love presenting. They do not hold back. They just love using their voice. So I think that's also a good opportunity. They feel heard when they share their work.
Yeah, especially at that age, 9 and 10. I feel like sometimes when you get a little bit older, they start to close off a little bit more, but thinking 9 and 10-year-olds, I could see them being very excited about sharing what they're
Yeah,
doing.
no, they love it.
Yeah.
They absolutely love it.
It's a great age.
Yeah.
So how does the whole unit end? How does it wrap up?
Yeah, I think it's really important for it to culminate in something.
Mm,
So they all then presented it. We sort of made it a little bit more formal at that point. We sat so that we could present it to each other. Each group went up and we clapped. Then we
mm,
had a class photo, and then we used lots of the pieces of work to make a display in the corridor so that others would see it. And looking back, I think it might have been nice if we'd done some kind of march through the school with our placards, or maybe done something a bit broader so that to bring in, they'd have loved that, to other classes, or around an assembly, done an assembly, something like that. But
yeah.
definitely culminating in something, because it's quite a rich sort of experience you've had together, and so I think it's really worth celebrating at that point.
Yeah. So if you were to do this again, the next time you do a campaign unit, what will you do differently?
I think one of the things is having the confidence to let them choose the cause. So having done it once, another
Mm,
time, to give them that choice right at the beginning. Another thing would be, could I connect it to an authentic purpose? So would there be a charity or some kind of social action that we could actually do in the community outside the school walls, or with parents, or some other connection within the community, so that it isn't just like a practice run, that it is actually connected to some real context, and whether it would be writing the letters and sending them off, or that it would connect to the real world. I think that would be a good next step.
Yeah.
And then as I just mentioned, just creating a wider audience. So either presenting it as an assembly or going on a march around the school, and connecting them in that way.
So I know that my own listeners in the US will definitely want to find you online, because I think, some of the things that you're doing, it's great to be connected to people in the UK. If they weren't, some of what we were talking about earlier, some of the social justice stuff. And I think some of us tend to only look at our own country, and to realize that these types of things are going on in other parts of the world is just exciting. So how could people connect with you online?
Well, I am blogging at passionforpedagogy.com. The 4 is a number in the middle. And there you can sort of follow my journey talking about critical pedagogy, which I call a pedagogy of the heart. So it is how to bring that social justice, how to integrate it into your work in the classroom, how to wear those lenses in every day. And that's what I'm passionate about. So you can read my blogs there, and I'm on Twitter at Jane Currell.
And that's JaneCurrell. Yes. Jane, thank you so much. This is a fantastic idea. I'm so glad it worked for you, and I hope other people try it.
Thank you. Thanks, Jen.
For links to all the resources mentioned in this episode, visit cultofpedagogy.com, click podcast, and choose episode 160. And remember to check out my mini course, 4 Laws of Learning, at cultofpedagogy.com/laws. Use the code LISTENER at checkout to get $5 off tuition. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.